Jake, today we're going to talk about money. You like money?
Money.
Money.
I wouldn't say that I'm neutral.
So this episode is going to be about financial stewardship, which is one of my favorite topics because I think a lot of people out there know how to make money, especially business owners, but they don't know how to steward the money the right way. So like the first question I put on here is like, why do some millionaires still go broke? Why do you think that is?
Why do some millionaires still go broke? Mo money, mo problems.
There's that.
Make money, spend money, right?
I think it's stewardship, right?
Yeah.
So I think people think, well, if I make this much money, this much revenue, this much coming in, it's going to be there forever. But you see multiple people. I mean, look at Mike Tyson was making, I think, what, $200 million, and all of a sudden he's broke, goes bankrupt, right?
Professional athletes.
Yep. Why do some businesses grow while the owners have less freedom?
Because they're doing too much of the work themselves.
Yeah, because you add on more clients, which means you make more money. If you don't delegate, leverage, have the systems, then you get to a point where you actually have more on your plate. That's what's interesting is I think people really don't recognize that. It's like, okay, my only goal is to make more money. So let's say you're making $100,000, right? Well, I'm going to make $1 million, right? Okay, so how can you do that? Well, unless you just took your pricing and 10 times it, right? So let's say like you're a service-based business. Let's say you're charging $10,000 a month. Unless you figure out a way to be like, we're going to charge $100,000 a month, which a lot of people don't. What they have to do is they have to be like, well, we need more people paying us at 10,000. Well, more people means more conversations coming in,
Right.
more jobs to fulfill on, all those different things. And so if you're not creating the system that is helping to scale, all that work falls on your lap, right? It's a lot different when you have 5 clients because you have 5 opportunities to have, clients that are pissed off or happy or whatever. But when you have 50, the odds go up. It doesn't go down. It's not like I got 50 clients and my life is easier unless you create the systems around it, right? The next one is, why do some families create generational wealth while others lose it in one generation?
Yeah.
So I think it comes down to stewardship and principles of the actual family. So in this episode, we're going to go through 5 different chapters. Stewardship of what you actually measure. So that's the first one, is the measurement. Then we're going to go through every dollar needs a job, which is my favorite. I think a lot of people just focus on what comes in. You got to focus on when it comes in, what is it doing to bring back more money, right? Kevin O'Leary always says, they're like my soldiers, right? I send my money out so we can get more soldiers and conquer and bring me back more money, right? It needs to have a mission for everything that happens. Number 3 is build assets, not applause. That's interesting because that kind of fights the ego a little bit. I think a lot of people go through lifestyle creep, right? They make more money. Oh, I can buy the car now. I can buy the watch. I can do all these things, right? The principles around that we're going to go through. And then margin is a spiritual discipline is number 4. That's going to be really interesting. We're going to break down the story of Noah, Joseph, and really get through like 2 different entrepreneurs, 2 different people, like CEO A versus CEO B. So we're going to give you guys examples that you guys can actually take away the framework. And the last one is build a legacy, not just a portfolio. This is my favorite verse in the Bible personally, which is Proverbs 13:22. It is, a good man gives inheritance to his kids' kids. When you start to think about your kids, your whole entire thing changes. Because a lot of people just think about their kids. It's like really egotistical sometimes because it's like, well, I didn't grow up with this, so I'm going to give my kids everything. I'm going to spoil them, right? Well, what happens when you spoil your kids? You don't pass down the things that you learned to get your wealth. And now your kids are left actually, for lack of a better word, being screwed. Right? Because they're like, well, money just comes to me on trees. I don't know how to create the money. I don't know how to steward the money. And then what happens is usually they're one that loses all the money from the generation, right? So before we get into the first chapter, any questions to start this thing off from you?
Let's see. When did this topic or this mindset be more prevalent in your life?
Okay, so a few things. This is actually really interesting. So I walked into, this is a fun story. I'll give this one first. This was probably about 8 years ago. I walked into Gucci. I walked into Gucci. This is in Vegas, right? And it was like on a Tuesday. No one was in there. Me and Megan are kind of shopping around, taking a look at everything. And we start talking to this guy just about money and different things. And I then mentioned to him, I was like, it's so interesting that like all the people I've met, I haven't really met people that have a bunch of money and then taught their kids the same principles and they carried on better than what they left it, right? And he goes, that's interesting. He's like, because you're probably looking in America, huh? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, let me show you something. So he pulls out this book and he shows me all the Asian countries. And he says, look at our store locations throughout the world. And you look at like America and there's like, you know, a good amount, right? But then you go to the next page and it's all Asian countries and it's like 15 pages. He's like, why do you think that is? And I'm like, because they have more money. He's like, no, these families have been around for generations. It's like they knew how to pass down principles. They knew how to do the stewardship part of it, right? So that was like the aha moment because I started researching like, well, what do they do, right? If you've ever met a Chinese business owner, and you see them actually, we're in Irvine, so you see all these kids driving nice cars. Their parents are overseas, and these kids have nicer cars and houses than the top people out here. And it's like, they have principles too, and they're going to carry on for generations. So that was the first thing I was like, okay, well, what is that? It was stewardship. It was passing down certain things. And I think in America, what happens is a lot of people get money for status. And when they have status, they send their kids to a certain school and they're like, oh, my next door neighbor bought them a BMW. I'm going to buy them a BMW. And they don't realize what the BMW is actually doing to the kid, where now it's not earned. The kid doesn't know really what's happening. And so then when you take the BMW away from them or they have to go make their own money, they don't have the grit or the principles to actually do it, right? So that's why a lot of times like passing down money to your kids, if you don't have code of honor in your family, you don't have standards, like it's super, super hard. That's the first way. The next one, the easiest one is, I think I talked about this a million times, but it was like in high school, I was around a lot of rich parents and I started watching and I was like, not many kids are better off than their family. And I was actually thinking selfishly, like if I was this dad's son, I would take their business to the next level. And I started thinking, I was like, well, I came from nothing, but I was like, because like I've got my mouth beaten. It's like what I talked about on Rick's podcast. The people with the number above their head of how many times they failed, the highest number would be the most successful person, right? That's the concept I see. And when you're just handed things your whole entire life, like the most unhappy person in the world is a trust fund baby. And it's everybody's like, oh, well, how? It's like, because the way I visualize it is almost like, when you fail, you're expanding your level of gratitude as well. Because like are me and you sitting here being like, I cannot wait to take a warm shower tonight. No, because like we do it every day, right? But if we were literally like, didn't have a warm shower for like, we went away to like Catalina for like, 2 months and it was all cold water. We'd get back home and be like, this is so nice. Or like sleeping in a bed, right? Like it's those things where it's like, well, what is that? It's like, well, we've ate crap for a long time where now the things that were just normal for us are actually bliss. It's nice, right? We're usually always temperature controlled, but when we're freezing in the mountains, all you can think about is like, how can I get by a fire? And you get by that fire and you're like, this is the best thing in the world. I don't want anything else. So I think of the people that don't really give suffering. You get a Lamborghini when you're young, you get all these different things. What tends to happen is they get pissed off when they don't get a red Lamborghini versus a blue Lamborghini. And they're actually pissed, right? People think like, oh, that's ridiculous, Jared, right? But they're actually pissed off there. So that's the level that I think about where it's like the best thing you can do for your kids is not just teach them through words, but make sure they can fail themselves and go through experiences. Teach them that like, you got to get your hands dirty on this. And you got to realize that things don't always go your way and life and business isn't fair. And I'm not here to pick you up and do everything for you, right? Because that's how we were successful. I mean, were you given anything in your life? Right? You had to figure it out. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So it's like, I think that's the main principle. Did that answer the question? Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's dive into framework number 1, which is steward what you measure. So the big idea here is you can't steward what you don't measure. And a lot of people comes down to like knowing your numbers. So the first thing that I put is your revenue alone is not the scorecard, right? And that you could say a scoreboard as well. But like if you look at a scorecard, it's like what you actually can measure, like where it's actually at, right? So a lot of people just know how much they're making in the business or as an income in their salary, right? But if you ask them like, okay, well, of that, how much are you keeping, right? That's the next phase where they're just like, well, I haven't, looked at my expenses. I haven't looked at my spending. And a lot of times they don't want to because they're afraid and they don't really want to. But the measurement is like, is your account going up, down, or idling, right? And most people, it's going down, and then they kind of do like a Hail Mary where they get more jobs or they get maybe birthday money or anything else. And they're like, oh, I'm back up and I'm okay. They're just trying to stay above water, right? And that's the interesting thing about, like I always talk about, money being water, being liquid, like that's a part of it, right? You notice that when you're in debt, they say you're underwater, right? Cash flow, they call cash liquid, right? It keeps your money in a bank. And so if you think about what happens to water when water stays stagnant, right? When a river is not flowing, what happens to the water? It gets mucky, it gets dirty. It's not drinkable anymore, right? The best water is running water. It's not the same thing as your finances. Is your finances are moving, right? And I don't mean come and come out, right? I mean like moving in the right direction. Because if the river is moving in the wrong direction, what happens is the river won't be there anymore, right? The river goes to a certain direction, which is usually always downhill, making the life easier for it to then end up somewhere where then it produces more. And usually where does that river end up? At a big body of water like an ocean or a lake, right? And so that's the concept of it, is like you got to make sure your money is flowing in the right direction, right? So great CEOs know their numbers, and great just financial people know their numbers as well, right? And most people think like, well, I got to just make more money. It's like, you just have to steward your money the better way, right? So I'm going to go through business scoreboard, which is numbers that you should know. So this is from the business standpoint. Everybody knows revenue, right? That's how much money that you make in your business. Pretty easy to know. Gross profit is your revenue minus the direct cost to deliver your product or service, right? Net profit is what's left after paying every expense, right? We like net profit, not gross profit. And I can get into CM1, CM2, CM3. This is going to be more technical stuff. But there's a certain way that people measure certain things, right? So like CM1 is like your baseline of what your actual profit actually is, which usually is just like, what is the cost that I sell for what I sold it for, right? So example of that for our business would be, hey, we make, let's say $10,000 for this. It's costing me this much for Jake to fulfill on it. I also have an editor that I pay for and a social manager I pay for. That is my CM1. But that's not the true number, because also what's taken into account is I'm spending money on software and services. I'm spending money on marketing to get new clients. I'm spending money on my time as well. So that then gets down to CM2 and CM3. And so I won't get into too much about that because it's kind of too technical talk. If you guys want to break that down more, I have a great video. So you guys can just leave a comment and I'll reach out to you and send you that video. But that's more, I'm trying to make this more like, hey, just tangible for the everyday person too. Cash on hand, pretty obvious. What is actually in your business bank account today? Burn rate, how much cash your business spends each month, right? Now, this is also could be looked at as what's called creep. I call it bleed because I like it to sound more aggressive, right? Like you're bleeding out money. But creep is super important because a lot of people, if they don't measure anything, a lot of times their issue is not they got to make more money. They just have to keep the money that's coming through their actual business. And so when you get busier and you get more deals and money is just flowing in nonstop, and especially this way I see a lot with people that I coach is they won't have a system for how they collect their money. So if they sign up, especially service-based businesses, if they sign up somebody and let's say they sign them up on the 3rd, they'll bill them every 3rd of the month. If they sign up on the 5th, they'll bill them every 5th of the month. So you're making this much money, but that money is just coming in different days and it's all over. It's horrible for accounting. So that's why for us, what we do is like we get everything on the 1st of every month. So all the lump sum of money comes out. Why? Because now the sum of money is there. I now can measure and I can distribute that, which we'll get into the flow, and your money has a job for everything. Operating expenses, the monthly cost required to operate your business. Most people don't even really even audit that ever, which comes down to like your runway and your operating expenses. Like that's the two things people miss the most. Then accounts receivable is just how much your customers owe you, right? That's the business scoreboard. Do you have any questions on that before we get into personal?
I guess a question for you would be, out of all of these, is there one that kind of snuck up on you that wasn't as prevalent as being important on this list?
Oh yeah.
Like obviously they're all important, but is there one in particular like?
Well, they're all important if you do them together. As people don't recognize, as a lot of people know their revenue. Some people even know their net profit, but they don't know their true net profit. Like they're like, okay, I know, like look, for example, I know my revenue, I know my operating expenses, which gives you your net profit.
Right.
But then it's like, there's some seasons that I spend more money in our business to acquire more talent. Like we're spending more money right now than we were in the past because of our time with this podcast, the time with me hiring my own editors for my stuff, right? And so if you don't account for that, like the expenses I'm putting down are different than they were, let's say 6 months ago.
Right.
Then you think about like, well, what am I doing this for? Well, I'm investing. It's the runway of my investment for like me to build the brand out, which I'm not seeing a ROI right now on this, but I have the vision for why we're doing it. So I'm willing to spend $10,000 every month for 6 months, which is $6,000, because I did the math and I'm like, I really just have to capture, let's say 4 or 5 clients, and that will pay me $100,000. And then once I do that, I also have a bigger audience. So like there's it's never just like a, let's do the same process. So there's 3 phases people talk about, which I love, is there's an acquisition phase, which is you're usually spending more money than what you're making because you're trying to acquire the people, right? There's a retention phase, which is we're going to spend more time on making sure that our clients are happy. And maybe that looks like you're taking them out to lunches, you're buying them gifts, right? So like retention phase for us in our business looks like around December time. You see us always give out gifts to our clients and make sure they feel warm and fuzzy about that. That is for retention purposes, right? And so there's the different phases. And then the last one could be just like sales phase, where it's like you are going sales, right? And so those are all 3 different phases where you don't always just do all 3 phases at once. And some people think you do, but sometimes you're like, no, we're in retention phase right now. We don't need to sell more. We need to make our current clients happy, right? So again, I say all of them because it's unacceptable for you as a true CEO not to know these numbers on a daily, minimum weekly basis. And you might think like, well, gosh, how do I do that? It's like, that's your job, is to figure out a system. Like obviously if you guys want the, master financial sheet video that I did, you guys can comment that as well. I broke down how I did at an easy level. There's systems now that can pop that out. QuickBooks can do it pretty well. But if you don't know your numbers, you don't know where to go for your business, right? So that answer it?
Yeah.
Cool. Personal scorecard, okay? Net worth, everything you own minus everything that you owe, right? So that's pretty easy to understand. And how you can do that is, assets and liabilities. So, and some people are like, well, I don't really have any assets. It's like, okay, well, how much money is in your bank? Do you, have, let's say, a house? What's the equity in the house? What do you owe? That's also a debt. Minus maybe your credit card bills and all that, right? So a lot of people would be like, well, I don't want to look 'cause I'm negative. It's like, I don't care if you're negative or positive. That's the beginning part for you to have a plan, right? You know how many coaching clients I've had where they're making a lot of money and then we look at their net worth and you're like negative 20, 30, 40 grand, right? It's just the scorecard. Now it's like, okay, cool. Like we know what to do now. Let's get out of it. It's not a scary thing. You guarantee yourself not to get out of it if you don't measure it or look at it. That's
almost more scary is not knowing where you might be.
It does take courage though.
Yeah.
And I will say that because most people do not want to look at this. It's because they're kind of bored by it, right? And I get it. It's not like I'm just like, I think some people look at me and they're like, dude, like this guy loves numbers. He loves all that. I hate numbers. Like I hate that stuff. I mean, last night, Megan Lily came to me and was like, she comes out, puts the kids to bed, and she walks over to me and she's like, we gotta do tax planning. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I dread it, right? And we're sitting there, I'm tired from working all day and we have to go through tax planning. But I tell myself this is the most important thing, right? And I just get myself to do it, right? And to focus too, because a lot of it is like I feel myself drifting off. Like Jack then started screaming and I'm like, yes, Jack, like we got him out, but you have to do it, right? So it's courage and it's your responsibility if you really want to be financially literate and actually do it the right way. Otherwise, don't be shocked if you're broke and don't be shocked if you have no money. Like it's the cool thing about this podcast is like you have options. Like it's your choices.
Right.
I don't care what position anybody is in that's watching this. If I was able to be you, I would get out of it because I would have a plan. So what's the difference? It's just my knowledge, right? People are like, oh, well, Jared, you have money. So like if I had you, I would have it. There's a funny experiment where it was like, if you gave the same amount of money to everybody in the world, within 2 years, it would end up in the same exact hands, right? It's like, well, why? It's like, because they know how to operate. They know the actual money, right? So should be hopeful for people. Monthly spending, pretty easy, right? What you spend each month. Monthly saving, what you save each month. Monthly investing, what you invest each month. Emergency fund, this is a fun one. Most people don't do this. You hear about a lot of people talking about like, well, what would be for an emergency fund? What I look at is like, what are your total monthly spending? And I would like to have at least 3 months. That's the goal, right? I think Dave Ramsey talks about emergency fund of $1,000. It's like very tangible, right? So he has his method. Again, good for some people to use that, you know, and
Great
not
starting point.
Yeah, and like Dave Ramsey's not for everybody. Robert Kiyosaki is not for everybody. It's like you want to learn all of it, right? I think there's certain principles to all of it I think are very, very healthy. But definitely emergency fund for me, I say 3 months. So you ask yourself like, well, Jared, I'm just struggling to even make my bills. It's like, well, first question, have you audited your operating expenses? I mean, I think we did this with you and you were like, I went home and I did it with my groceries and I was like, wow, I'm spending way more than I thought, right?
Yeah.
Well, that gives you awareness. And now you're like, well, now I can maybe save $50 every single month. And I don't care what the number is, right? Like it doesn't have to be this huge astronomical number. It gets you to ask questions of like, do we really need this right now? Do
it
we
starts one thing at a time. Okay.
Yeah, like, oh, I want to get this coffee at Starbucks. It's like, do I need that $10 right now? It's like, no, we're trying to put our emergency fund because that's gonna make me less stressed, right? So that's a part of it. Total debt. I'm gonna break down debt a little bit more. It's total debt is also, it's important to list that out, but also know what the APR is on the actual debt, right? The highest APR needs to be paid down first. I think a lot of people just pay the minimums on their cards.
Yeah.
You really should make sure you're knocking out the debt that is the APR. That's the highest because that is just bleeding out as much money as possible. Then asset growth, kind of more sophisticated. Before that, I said giving percentage, which I think is tithing is super important. But I think if anybody's watching this, just like, do I not have any money? If you do have money, giving percentage is super important because like how much do you actually, that gets into like more faith principles for me. It's like, do you actually trust God or do you trust money? The level of your percentage will tell me what that actually answer is, right? Which I think is interesting. And then asset growth is just like how much your assets are actually growing, right? So if you put in $1,000 into the S&P 500 and then you let it sit there for 5 years and now it's worth 500, you know, you gained $400, right? Really boring stuff for a lot of people, but you know, what's even worse is being so stressed out because the number one thing that makes people get divorced is financial issues. And that's why this stuff is so important because it's not just what you have. Because by the way, a lot of these habits that you're not doing right now were probably passed down to you because your parents. I'd never met anybody that their parents were like super, super on top of these things. And then their kids are like, I'm good. I'm not going to do this at all, right? What happens, you think about your parents, you're like, they never did this. They never talked about money. They never really showed me anything, right? And so it's your job to break that line and start to learn it yourself. And we have YouTube, we have these podcasts. There's so many ways that you can educate yourself. There's so many great books. You learn it yourself. And what you're not just giving your kids is you're giving your kids financial freedom, right? I mean, it's the coolest thing. It's like, Jack has more money than me and Megan right now in his account than we did like probably like 8 years ago combined, me and her, right? And we're like, that's pretty cool, right? But more importantly, we're going to pass down principles that are like super important for him to actually carry on the wealth, right? And so if you think about that concept, you're like, okay, well, I am not just passing down money. That's the bottom. I'm passing down less stress, more commitments, more communication around finances. Because most people just want to put their head in the sand and be like, I don't even want to talk about it, right? It's scary, right? So that's where I start to realize like it's my duty to learn this stuff, to pass it down because I'm preventing a fight and a potential divorce down the lines with my kids because that would save the whole entire thing.
If you want to look out for your kids, you want to equip them with the right tools and knowledge to handle those situations. So if you're going to bury your head in the sand and not do anything, like you're setting them up for failure.
Yes.
You want to help your kids.
Well, and dude, I think a lot of women too, like, and I would say 95% of the men out there don't do this stuff. And that's not to shame or anything. It's just more of like, that's the reality, unfortunately, of the, United States. A woman is going to be so much more attracted to you because your job is to protect and provide. It's like one of the main things for it, right? And so when you know the plan and when you know your finances and you have a plan for everything, it doesn't mean that life is going to go perfect. Like, especially being a business owner, like sometimes you get kicked in the mouth and it's not even your fault. Like you saw what happened with COVID and those different things. Like it happens, right? But if you don't have financial literacy and those things happen, you're out. And what happens is you don't have a plan. So you start to get more stressed out. And then what that does is that articulates to your wife that you don't, we might not be good. And so then they get more stressed and then the whole family just starts to break. Versus like, I remember when COVID hit, I looked at Megan, I was like, okay, we're going to figure it out. And I didn't really have the answers right there, but I knew my financial literacy could get me out of the hole eventually. And the interesting thing about that whole thing, which I think is really, really cool, this is happening right now. I'm trying to say this. This is not to be braggadocious. This is for education. What I learned during COVID is I wasn't as financially literate as I am right now. And if I had emergency funds and I did every single thing I talked to you about in this whole thing, and I started investing like crazy during COVID, the wealth goes crazy. So I think most people start investing when they have money. But when you have money and you're saving and just waiting for the markets to tank, I mean, I'm buying assets right now, pennies on the dollar, right? And so it's like, well, and I talk to everybody else, and they're like, I'm in debt, I don't have any money, I don't have any of this stuff, blah, blah, right? Well, they're not stewarding their money the correct way. And I've been preparing. I mean, you're looking, we're in a 2-bedroom apartment right now, right? Could I afford 2-3 houses right now? Absolutely. We've literally planned for this time, and I think it's going to get way worse. Like, I don't mean to be doomsday, but like you see where the market's going. You look at the bond market, you look at the stocks, you look at everything that's happening. We're in a huge AI bubble, and when it pops, it's going to just go across all economies. So if you're in a bad situation right now, like it's going to get even worse. If you have the money, you're picking things off pennies on the dollar because people are just trying to pay off bills and pay off things. So they'll hand it off to you and you ride that out. And then all of a sudden the market starts to correct again like it always does. Now you have assets that take off, right? It's like this, you see that the wealthiest people got wealthier during COVID. You don't get wealthier during the best times. You get wealthier during the worst times. So this is not just for a thing of like, oh, just save for fear, right? It's be calculated. It's save. Imagine if you had $10,000 saved up and it was for the time where like, I'm going to wait for stocks to crash. I'm going to wait for crypto to crash. I'm going to wait for, gold to go down or whatever it is. And once it goes down and you look at the greed index, because right now the greed index for crypto or the fear index for crypto is like 9 out of 10. I'm buying like crazy. Like I'm backing the trucks up and like, let's go. Right. Because then what happens is I'm taking a little bunny trail right now, but this is interesting. What I do is I look at the fear index and then I look at, so let's say like, example, gold, right? So fear in the world, right? Gold starts to actually go up because they don't trust the currency for the most part, right? So you can actually go on Google Search Console and see what people are searching, right? If you were to take XRP, for example, the crypto, you saw that the charts of XRP going up was exact same charts as how much people were researching. So when it was down to like $1, nobody's researching. When it's up to $3.50, everybody's researching. So what's happening is they're learning about it. They're buying at the top because FOMO. Oh, it's going to go to $10. It's going to go to $100, right? Right now, you got people being like, sell this. This is fraud. This is $1. Like it's the worst deal ever. I'm backing up the trucks. And then when it goes to $3 and I see that the fear index is dropping with XRP, I'm selling off to get my money back and keeping the position. So it's just free money play the whole entire time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like, this is not just for like savings or rainy day. It is for that. That's emergency fund. But it's for you to save the money to then buy the assets. And then now the assets are just paying you way more.
It's just positioning. You're putting yourself in a good position to have options.
Yes. Okay. And again, the example of that is knowing your numbers as if I always talk about the coach analogy, right? If you went to your coach and you're like, Coach, what's the score? I don't know. And you're like, Coach, what play are we running?
What should I do?
Not sure, right? You're probably going to hate that coach.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, dude, why are you even here, right? Are you even a coach, right? It's the same like thing that if I ask a CEO or somebody, it's like, do you know your numbers? Like, no, I got to look, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to lead your team. You're not going to lead your company, right? So it's your duty. The best CEOs and people I talk to, if I literally ask them, do you know your numbers? They go into so much detail about it, right? Because they're focused on it. What you're not focused on will just leak out of your business, and that's what happens a lot of times. So that's framework number one. Framework number two is every dollar needs a job, right? I love this. So the parable of the talents, which is Matthew 25, talks about there's three people. They're all given money. One person goes out and invests it, brings back more. Another person does the same exact thing, brings back more. Another person gets scared, fearful, buries the money. And then when the guy comes back to reap the benefits from it, they give them some back and more. The other guy gets them some back and more. The other guy says, I was fearful. He buries it. He gives him back exactly what he was. And he says, you fool, right? The concept of that is a lot of people, which is why I want to be very clear, like the emergency funds and the rainy day events, like those aren't just like, I think some people just think like save, like never spends, right? We'll get into that framework more later in this podcast where the spending habits are interesting because you want to ask yourself, is this an asset or a liability? And a lot of times if you go through that, you start to realize that like a lot of the times you're buying this thing for ego. And you have to have a formula around that versus like, example, money comes in, you make $100,000. You're now like, well, I can go buy a Rolex for 20 grand, right? You got to ask yourself, is that going to make me more money? And if the answer is no, it's probably not the best decision. Let's take that 20 grand, let's put it into an investment. Let's wait 5 years. Now that investment makes you another 20 grand. Now it's okay to buy the Rolex.
Right.
You get the same position, right? People hate that. People are like, I want the Rolex now. Like I never had 80 grand after left over. So like we can do it, right? If you ask yourself, again, that's poor stewardship. That is your ego flaring up. And so you really can tell somebody's stewardship skill sets, I would say, based off of how they make decisions that are impulsive, right? I'm going to buy the watch. I'm going to buy the car because I can. And a lot of times because they look around and they want to feel more successful. And it's so interesting, bro. It doesn't matter what you have. It does not matter, especially if you know what you're talking about. I was the guy that thought, oh, when I get rid of my penthouse, people are going to be like, oh, he's downgrading. He's, and I had all this fear in my head. Nobody cared. I became more successful when we actually lowered our overhead because I radiated actually wealth because we became more wealthy. And I didn't become more wealthy because we made more money. We stewarded it better. And so now it's like I have confidence where I walk around. And if somebody, for example, if someone came to me while I have my penthouse, we have our multiple cars, we have our house, and they're like, bro, like, I don't know, I think you're poor. I would kind of get more offended by that because I'd be like, I hope they don't look at my account because my account wasn't as strong as it was. Now it's like they look at me and they're like, you're in a 2-bedroom apartment. You guys got one car. You don't spend much money at all. You're poor. I would kind of laugh because I'm like, I don't want to ever say you should see my account. But like the difference of it is like I don't embody it because I actually was poor. All my showing was the show, right? The house, this, that. And that's what you see a lot of people do is they make money, but they also have lifestyle creep. They spend as much money as they're making. So who cares if you're making $1 million if you're spending $999,000, right? You're $1,000 left over versus you're making 100 grand, but then you're only spending 60 grand. Who's wealthier, right? Yeah. Well, the guy that shows it more. It's like, that's ego. Like, who cares? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Well, I care. I care about the car. I care, right? It's like, dude, nobody cares, bro. Yeah. Nobody cares.
I think it takes the framework. Number 2, literally every dollar needs a job. Is your money working for you or not? Yes. Is it just dust, turning to dust in the wind, or is it bringing you something back?
Is a liability. And I think a lot of people think like, well, can a watch be something that can bring you more money? We talked about this in another episode where it's like possibly if it gives you more, strength and it reminds yourself of like, wow, okay, I did the goal. We're going to keep going, right? Fine
Be
line.
Careful.
Fine line, But again, it's like same thing with the car. Fine line. I don't know. Unless, you think about it though, and you're like, well, what if I join the country club and the country club costs, 200 grand? It's like, well, I have a buddy that just joined Newport Beach Country Club, which is super exclusive. I think it's like 500 grand to get in. It's like crazy expensive. And he had to pay money before he was even in for like the last decade. And he was like, bro, I literally got paired up with a guy. We just closed a huge development deal and that paid for all the money I paid in the past. It's like, got it. Right. It's the reason why, like, when I go golfing, I'll go golfing at really nice courses because I usually get paired up with people who are business owners. Because why? I go golfing during the week, which means you're not an employee, you're usually a business owner or you're retired. And I'm getting something from it. So what I could go spend $40 on a tee time, or I can go spend $200 on a tee time. But when I go spend $200 on a tee time, I have a likelihood of getting more deals. And so there's that concept, right? But again, it's every dollar has a job. So if you're just going like, oh, I'm just going to go, for example, if you're like, well, I'm going to go golf a really nice course, but I'm going to go as a single.
Yeah, I did it. It was fun.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it is what it is, right? Yeah. So every dollar should have an assignment. That's why when I look at it, for example, is let's just say round numbers. If money's coming in and you're making a profit of $20,000, okay, after all expenses, that you're taking care of yourself, you have profit of $20,000. What are you doing to make that $20,000 make you more money? Now, a lot of people would be like, well, let's take the 20,000 and let's put it towards crypto, right? All of it towards crypto. Could it work? Possibly. Could it not? Not really a good deal. It's almost like going to the casino and being like, you have 20 grand to spend and I'm going to put 20 grand on black. Could you double it within a second? Yes. Could you lose it within a second? Yes. So probably it's better to let your money kind of work in different ways, right? So I love, if you're not educated and you don't have conviction around investments, my thing is diversify as best as possible, because you never know what goes up and goes down. At first, I wasn't that person. I was just going in what I thought was the best thing, right? Now we're very diversified, which is interesting because our bottom line portfolio it's very consistently going up. When you saw, stocks drop, you saw gold go up. And so we have both of them. And so it kind of just like evened out. If not, I made a little more money. And so when the times, and it's not even just investing in American companies, it's investing in foreign companies, right? I had some investments that we did with the Venezuelan stock market, and that went crazy after we captured, whatever his name was, right? So it's like, and again, that's how learning that stuff. I'm getting kind of technical here, but like that's a part of it where it's like the more you know, if you're somebody that's like, I don't know where to put my money, make it safe. There's a book that is called The Simple Path to Wealth. You guys can click that down. I forgot who wrote it, but it's The Simple Path to Wealth. Very great book and principles about money. That's very easy to understand. So I would recommend picking that whole thing up. Yeah. The next thing is consumers spend what's left. Stewards tell money where to go, right? So again, that 20,000 that's coming in, I already know. So I love what Rick says, wire in, wire out, right? That's the most important thing that I look at is like, how can I actually utilize that the right way? And when you do that, then you have a system and things are going out. And the cool thing is some people think like, oh, well, I'm throwing that money out. It's not an expense. It's an investment. So like for me, right now we have like 18 different accounts between brokerage accounts and other like investments and different things like that. The thing about my mentality is like I look at my bottom line in terms of not my total net worth. I look at just my checking account and I work based off of that. So when the money comes in, it disperses to different accounts to feed them. If I do need to pull money, that means I lose, right? So the first thing I do is if I need to pull money, I go to my emergency account. If I go to my emergency account, then I analyze like, well, why am I losing all this money? Is my business not making money? Is this even worth it for me to feed this whole entire thing anymore? If the answer is yes, like I just need some more capital to go after, okay, maybe they will liquidate some of the investments, right? But then I have to ask myself the questions like, is it worth for me to liquidate this investment that I think could probably make me a 10, 15% return? Will I get a higher return if I put that liquid back in my company to save the company, right? So again, you start to ask more questions. For us to go completely broke is very difficult because we have filters to catch us the whole entire way. For us to go to zero, it's like, it's pretty hard, right? So yeah, 4 questions before every major purchase. Does it create income? Does it buy back time? Does it appreciate? Does it create kingdom impact? If you ask those 4 questions, you are so much better than most people because most people impulsively buy, right? You go to and that's what's hard, bro. It's like we were in Vegas and we like to go to all the different shops. I have these principles though. So I'm not a guy who's just buying things to buy things. I walk in and there's things I want. Like we walked into Peter Lick again. I'm just like, dude, I want this one picture he just got. He just got a contract with NASA and like, it's sick. It's so sick. I'm like, and we can do it, right? So again, I asked myself, is this going to create income? Unfortunately not. Is it going to buy my time? It's probably going to take my time because I'm going to be staring at it all day, right? Does it appreciate? Possibly, but at what rate is it going to appreciate? Like the moon photo that we bought, right? Luna Pathway. I mean, that's appreciated, but only by 3,000. It made us money, right? But for us to liquidate it and sell it and the shipping of it, like really, it's not the best investment. It's exciting because it's like, oh, cool, we got more money out of this whole thing. But if I put that money towards an investment, we would have made more, right? So it's not really appreciating at the rate that I want to.
Right.
And does it create kingdom impact? Like a picture is not creating kingdom impact, right? So the answer is unfortunately no. So the CEO comparison is the bigger the income, bigger house, bigger payments, lifestyle inflation, little investing, consistent pressure, right? Now, you see a lot of CEOs are like that. They're making all this money and they're just like buy, right? The real CEO that actually does really well is somebody who is going to have, maybe smaller income. Yes, but he has cash reserves. He's investing monthly. He knows his margins. He has assets that are growing, and he has financial freedom. I think that's like the main thing that I always preach to people is like, what do you really want? Like, do you really want more money or do you want more freedom and peace?
Yeah.
And they usually always say freedom and peace, but then you like look at their habits and you're like, you aren't acting that way.
Are you willing to do it at a lower level?
Yeah. And they don't ask themselves questions. Okay. So what are you doing right now to create more time and more peace? They can't answer that. What are you doing right now to make more money? Oh, they can answer that.
Oh yeah.
Or any ads? I'm networking like crazy. I'm going to this events. Traveling nonstop, right? Is that stuff giving you peace? Oh my gosh, the more money I make, I actually have more clients that like are pissed off and everything else. Like, no, well, but if I make more money, Jared, I'll have more peace, right?
Right.
Okay. Like, let's think about those things, right? So that's why I love my conversation with because a lot of times they have the answers, they just don't know how to ask the right questions. And then when you ask the right questions, they have to answer them. And they're like, oh, wow, yeah, what I'm saying I want, I'm not even doing what I actually want, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like, I'm so tired of pain. And you're like stabbing yourself.
Yeah.
And you're like, just stop stabbing yourself, right? Yeah. Like, oh yeah, no, this is okay, right? You still have to obviously fix those wounds that you gave yourself in the past, which is the trauma. This is one thing I'll say about this too. I had a coaching call this morning with somebody. The brain's really interesting because the brain, it releases dopamine, not just off of positive things, but negative things as well. So as a CEO, what tends to happen is when you start to grow a bigger business, you have more stress. And so you get used to that stress. And so the stress actually is almost addiction that comes out. And so when you have so many problems to fix in your day and all of a sudden you don't have problems to fix, what tends to happen? Those people try to find the problems. It's kind of what I talked about in the last podcast where it was like when you're on vacation, you call your employees and you're like, hey, how's everything going? They're like, it's great. Are you sure? What about this? Right? You're trying to find the problems that are happening because your brain is telling you this isn't normal. Right. We're used to this going wrong. It's not going wrong anymore. There's something wrong though. Figure it out, right? Like I don't believe it, right? And so that's a part of it where a lot of people have to change the framework of their minds, not just their habits, but like it's okay to make more money and not work as much. If you do the frameworks, you're going to be like, well, I'm not used to this. Like this doesn't feel like it is supposed to be that way. And I'm a testament to that. I work way less on things I want to work for. I use leverage way more than I did in the past. And I sometimes feel guilty because I'm like, I don't feel like I deserved that investment to go through the roof, right? I mean, you saw like when AOR went through the roof, I was just like, how did I make more money in a day than I did in a year? And I was just like, but then you got to think to yourself, like I put myself in that situation. If I was so busy in my business, I wouldn't have researched that. I wouldn't have done those different things. So it was leverage. But your brain is playing tricks on you to be like, come on, like it can't be this easy, right? The whole quote of it, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Okay. It's like, well, if you have the right framework with leverage, That's why the top people make the most money, right? Because they leverage everything. So any questions about that?
I think just to go back to like every dollar needs a job. When you're talking, I thought about when, like, let's say someone is breaking even, or someone who isn't financially looking at all like where the money is coming and where it's going, or where the money is going. If it's all just kind of piling on, they're like, oh, I have more. Like we're in the positive. Let's spend it. It's like, you think that maybe your brain, like, I wonder what it is, because if the person who finally has the extra money then just spends it to go back to the equilibrium in their brain, like you're used to just like barely making it. Oh, I have this money, I need to spend it.
It goes both ways though.
Yeah.
So it's your relationship with money. So the person that lost everything has trauma based off of that. And let's say they then get a big check. They now freak out when they get below, let's say 30,000, and they never had 30,000 before. But in their mind, they're like, I remember that trauma from the past of not having that money. And so their zero is under 30 grand. So they act like they're broke when they have money because the mind's playing tricks on them. That's that side of it. The other side of it is like what you're talking about, is like the people that like make money. And the first thing, like, okay, we have it, right? The spending part of it is really interesting because it's usually not based off trauma. It's based off of ego, and it's based off of this will come over and over and over. So like if you make $100,000, you're like, what's going to happen again? You see with real estate agents, right? They make a big check and they spend it all because they're like, it's going to happen again, right? And there's a part of it that's like, I like that mentality a little bit, because you're like, hey, you're going to make it happen. But what you really should do is steward the money better. You have 100 grand. You're like, okay, there is a million different ways I can change how this 100 grand works. I can spend all of it on a Patek Philippe and wear my watch. What's the likelihood of that making me money? Probably very little. What's the likelihood of me acting like I have more money than I know? A lot. What's also the likelihood of people looking at me and saying, I have a nice watch, and so he's going to pay for the bill. So it actually makes you spend more money because you're like, oh, this guy's rich. He's just going to pay for it, right? So like, that's a weird thing. You can take the 100 grand and you can say, we're not going to touch any of this. We are going to invest all of this, and we're going to wait 10 years and just see what happens, right? Who wins after 10 years? Right? So it's like, you can do it a million different ways. And that's why I think like it's your relationship with money and what are your goals? See, the first thing I ask people is like, what makes you happy? And a lot of people think like, well, if I have this house on the beach, and it's all inspirational stuff. If I have a nice car, I'm going to be happy, but it doesn't really work that way. So I ask myself those questions too. Are my goals to go get a private jet? Are my goals to have all this money that I'm going to spend? And the answer actually was yes at first, but then I started really digging into that question, and I was like, that's all ego. That was, if I have a private jet, I'm going to post it and people are going to be like, he's successful, right? I'm also going to pull up in a nice car, and I like the feeling of pulling up in a nice car, and everybody's like, oh, like, look at me get out of the car, right? But that's ego. And so I then thought about it, and I was like, well, what do I really want? Because that risk also my happiness. That risk, because nothing's worse than you getting out of your car that's expensive and people are looking at you and you're like, they don't even know I have $500 in my bank account.
Yeah.
You know? And like, this car is everything I got. And most people do it that way, right? Versus like, I pull up and you got money in the bank, you got investments, your kids are more wealthier than most of those people driving, those cars. And you're like, well, I'm also teaching my kids that the money principle is not about the money and what you show. I'm teaching them like, how do you steward the money? Right. So it goes both ways. I think it's what's your relationship with money, right? Why are you doing that purchase? Why are you not spending it, or why are you spending it? If there's a good reason for it, okay, there's a good reason. But if you dig deep into that, then you start to realize like, that's not really a good reason. It stops you a little bit. And you might still do it, but like, it's hard, right? So investments in a business would be hiring people that leverage your time and making more money. I think you are an investment, right? But we've hired other people that weren't great investments. So how do I make a good investment? Well, I have to create a good system that you can perform in. I have to encourage you to, be better, which is leadership. And I also have to make sure that the person I'm hiring is going to put in the effort that I require, right? I can get the first two right, but then I can hire the wrong person, and then that person actually makes it not a good investment. So there's a part of it where I think people think like investment is just put your money into it and lets it, just make money. Yeah. It's like, no, there's work involved with making sure that you hire the right person, you give them the systems to make them perform, and you make sure that I bring enough jobs in where you can fulfill what I'm paying you, right? So there's work involved with it, but therefore you're an asset to our company, right? There's marketing, right? Are we going to market things like what we're doing here to make us more money? Yep. Education, which you see a lot of stuff I put online, is educating, people, and in return, it does make us more money.
Right.
It increased my brand. There's so many things that happen. The systems, we talk about that. I say real estate and index funds. Those are just investments, right? Again, we won't get into that too much because that's actually a full-time job. And then you have consumption, right? Emotional purchases, status symbols, keeping up with others, lifestyle upgrades. That's what you want to stay away from. So those things right there, if you can ask yourself, is this an investment or is this consumption, right? Most people would realize that most of the time they make a lot of money, they're putting it towards the consumption bucket. You want to put it towards the investment bucket, how the investments make you money, then do the consumption, right? That's the stewardship right there. It doesn't mean don't ever get it.
Yeah, you can get there. Just
most people are like,
filter first.
Never buy the Ferrari. Like, no, go get the Ferrari. Do it in the right order though, right? Go investment, make the money, boom. Now it's like, it's pretty much free just because you stewarded it better, right? So action items is review the last 90 days of spending, color code your spending, meaning like red is all of your spending, right? You can see like the differences and break into different buckets. Figure out investments versus expenses versus lifestyle, and then create a spending rule around that. So I think that's a really good one. Any questions before we get into framework number 3?
Just like delaying gratification. It comes in, if you can just pause on that dopamine hit of the things that you want, you could 2x, 3x, 10x. It almost like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to just wait and have, if that's the mindset of like, I want more, right? Like if you have that mindset of just like, I want the thing, I want the car, I want the watch. Well, you could have 2 watches and you could have 2 cars. Yeah. If you just delay that gratification a little bit, steward it the right way, have your money work for you, make sure every dollar has a job, and then you could have all those things that you want plus more.
Dude, I mean, it's like, and the thing I think people don't realize is it's harder to say no in the beginning, but once you learn it, it gets a lot easier because it's like when you have the money, right? It's like one thing, it's like, dude, the first Rolex I bought, right? I had like 10 grand in my account and I bought it for like 7 grand. So it's like literally almost 70% of my net worth was gone. And I was so proud. I was so happy. And I couldn't say no to it. So I wasn't a good steward at the time. We can buy so many Rolexes right now, and I say no to it because I go through this framework because it doesn't align. In the past, it was just, I want the Rolex.
Right.
It's me, right? Now I think about my kids. I think about the pride that the Rolex gave me, the pride of me seeing my kids' high yield savings accounts and their investment account is like, it's so cool. It's like, okay, like that's what I like. So what do? How can I feed that more? Just like how can you feed the Rolex? So like, the mission behind it is so much bigger because it's weird for me to walk around with all these nice things and then now like Megan doesn't have anything, the kids don't have anything, we're now in poverty. Like that's a weird feeling, right? Versus for me, it's like more of an addiction now to provide and to be a good steward of it, right?
Yeah.
It's also like me preaching this stuff to people. Like it's so healthy because I get to coach people that are horrible stewards of their money. And I'm like, wow, I'm seeing what's happening in firsthand, and I don't want to be that person either. And then when they finally start to listen to me, their whole life starts changing, and they get less stressed out. And then I'm sit back after the call, and I'm just like, that's the answer. So why don't I get super aggressive? Why don't I guarantee my family is going to be wealthy? Which, what does that mean? Live under your means, have a thing for every single dollar you make. Be ruthless with the way that you're giving value to people because when you give value, you get stuff back, right? Don't just be so focused on sales, more money because that becomes your master. Have kingdom principles with God. Then you'll see what happens to your life and you're like, wow, God's providing. And that's the main thing for me too is like, I'm doing it the right way, but notice the words I don't like I'm using is I. If you have a kingdom principle, which is God, and you run everything through his currency and his framework, you start to actually have peace. So even when he takes jobs away from you,
Right.
we talked about offline, when a job comes through, I'm about to sign it up and it feels right to me, I don't just pray now, thank you, God, for giving this to me. I say, close this door if it's your will, and I will be a diligent servant to you. And sometimes he closes the door. I don't go, God, why'd you do that? I need that money, right? Well, why am I saying that? Because that's my master. I'm saying, God, thank you for closing that door. I can't see what you can see. And so let's just keep moving forward, right? And so it's like, that's the part of it where if you take away God from it, you can still follow these principles and be successful and all that,
Right.
but you won't be fulfilled. You won't be happy, because a lot of that part is like, I love having money, not because of flaunting. I love having money because I can impact so many people. I can change lives. I can, through just the money, through my energy, because when you don't have money, you don't have much, you have stress. You can't help anybody. I mean, all these people that I coach, for the most part, when their business isn't doing well and they're so stressed, they can't help anybody else besides their business. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, what if you could be abundant in every single thing you do and everywhere you touch and everybody you talk to, and the peace is all there, right? You just impact so many people, and who knows, bro, who you're impacting at that time. There's been people that have said one sentence to me that's changed my trajectory of my life. And if I ask them, do you remember that day? They're like, no, because it was irrelevant. But why? Because they were abundant in everything they did. And it's just like, dude, I want that. I want everybody I touch and see to just feel the presence of God, and the presence of abundance, and the presence of real wealth, and not be polluted. Like the devil always does this, bro. There's intimacy in sex, and there is lust and horniness. They look the same physically, but they're two very different things. There is kingdom wealth and there is worldly wealth. They look the same, but they act very differently. They're a different steward of the whole entire thing. It's a different action. It's different words that you use, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty deep one if you think about that, So cool. Let's get into frame number 3. Build assets, not applause. We kind of already covered that a little bit. So that concept is income creates lifestyle, assets create freedom. Looking wealthy isn't the goal. Becoming financially free is. So your wealthy buckets are your operating cash, your emergency funds. You can have brokerage accounts. You can have retirement. You can have real estate. You can have business equities. You can have precious metals, right? That's a diversification of your wealth building, which I love, just like allocating a little bit into each pot every single month, even if it's $50, $100, whatever it is. Just have the money come in, allocate to those things. Wait for 5 years, wait for 10 years, watch what happens to it. Because what's also happening is when you have 20 grand, your mind says we have 20 grand. And let's get a lower number for people too. Let's say 5 grand. 5 grand, you have 5 grand. Okay, we have 5 grand. What am I doing with that money? It's like, well, I can spend all of it. So you tend to spend all of it, right? But let's say you take the 5 grand and you allocate 3 grand of it to investments, and you have 2 grand. Now you have to physically figure out how to run your life off 2 grand because you don't have it.
Right.
And the harder it is to get that money back over, it's not like it's just like a transfer. That's why it's like, I love buying gold or silver, or I love putting it into a brokerage account that then I get taxed for it if I shift it back over, because I physically have to go grab the gold or silver and sell it. It's a nuisance. And so the whole time I'm like checking myself, like, is this worth it, or can I just do something other to make more money, right? So the buckets of it, I think, are super important. So again, you want to build assets, not applause. That goes back to everything we talked about.
Yeah. It's almost like when people want to make more money, they put themselves in the situation like, okay, like I can be a dog. I can like go get sales and I can work hard to like kind of feed the beast. But if you can almost set parameters on yourself with this money that you're investing, like make it difficult to pull that out. And then it's like you're working against yourself. You're being a dog in the right way because it's already working for you, rather than just like you're pulling from something that's just constantly emptying. It's like, no, like make it hard to pull from the thing that you have. Like it's the same effort. It's just like where you want to pull it from.
Yeah, bro, that's the best principle, because people will probably look at me or other people that are good stewards of their money. I don't even trust myself. I noticed that when I kept all my money in my business checking account or savings and I saw the total number, naturally I got complacent when I had money and I got stressed when I didn't. And so when I started having that system of flowing it out to different investments, I always have a small amount of money in the bank because I just don't trust banks either. That's a different thing. But I have a small amount of money in the bank, and it causes me to be like, let's go. Like, let's not stressfully, because you're like, I'm good. Like I have 17 backup plans, and that kind of gives you like the confidence, but it also looks at you're like, I don't want to lose. Like I don't want to then have to pull from it because that hurts, right? You're gamifying the whole process. Yeah. It's the same thing as like when I stopped smoking weed, right? The hardest thing was like, California, you can order it and it just comes to your door, right? And so what I started realizing is like I deleted my delivery driver's number, and I was like, because I could just text them and be like, bam, bam, it's there. For me to now have to go smoke weed, I have to get in the car and drive to the dispensary, and the whole time I have parameters there. So I maybe haven't done it yet, right? But maybe I could get in the car. But as I'm driving, I'm having this thing of like, is this worth it? Is it worth it? And I could take a left turn and go back home, right? And when I get to the dispensary, I have to walk in the door, and like I could just be like, it's not worth it, right? So it's like there's parameters for me that's like, I don't know if I trust myself fully. The same thing with money. Like you want to make sure that you're having these parameters because like, especially this is all addiction. And so it's not like it's like, oh, you just don't feel it. It's like, no, you realize that you want to do it. Your mind wants you to spend money, or your mind wants you to be fearful of money. Like it's a relationship thing. So you have to create a system where like, am I insecure about my money, or am I insecure about my ego? If you're insecure about your ego, you're going to tend to spend all your money. If you're insecure about your money, you're going to tend to save it and be fearful of it, which is the people that don't spend a dime.
Right.
And they are just so scarce, and they're just like, oh, no, we can't do that. And you're like, bro, and you look at your account, you're worth millions. Like, yeah, but it could be gone tomorrow, right? I don't know if that's good either. It's not having money rule you. So money rules your ego, and if it rules your fear as well, it's got to be where this is flow, where it's like, it's not my master, God's the master. I think that's the most important. Okay, so there's a few things I wrote down with CEO examples. Warren Buffett, great example, one of the richest guys ever. Modest lifestyle, long-term investing, wealth over appearance. A lot of us can't be that guy, I mean, he gets McDonald's still every day, but you kind of like take inspiration from it. Like if he can do it, why is he doing it? But also take consideration, the guy grew up in the Great Depression era, so it's like a whole different thing, right?
Yeah.
So David Green, who owns Hobby Lobby, God owns Hobby Lobby, which I love his format. It's like God is his CEO. So he actually acts like he needs to pay a CEO. So it's like, it's a fundamental like source of it. I love that. And that's the reason why if you want to make it easier on yourself, biblical principles of how God wants you to steward money, there's so much conversations about money in the Bible. A book I'd recommend on that is Taylor Welch's book, The Currency of Heaven. Awesome about business principles in terms of money and currency. And then Truett Cathy is the owner of Chick-fil-A. Everybody knows they're closed on Sundays, and everybody's like, what a silly business plan. And a lot of people would kind of like overlook it because it's obviously a biblical principle. But from a business standpoint, it's pretty silly to some people. Like how much money they can make on Sunday. It does two things. One, it honoring the Sabbath for God, right? God's going to provide for that. But I think more importantly, there's a little underlining thing where it's like you always want Chick-fil-A on Sundays. And so it makes you want to go back during the week. Oh. So there's a weird thing to both sides of it, but I love the principles they've done. And yeah, I mean, that's going to be just action items on that is invest monthly, even if it's small amount, just start now. It's a principle because if you start investing now, you will have more money and you'll start to get that. I don't care if it's $5. I don't care if it's $10, right? Just start doing the process. Yeah. It's not going the whole staircase. It's literally taking the first step, right? Yeah. Diversify right now because most of us don't have time to look at these investments and study them. So diversifying is just, making sure you're good across all boards. And also, I think people don't realize this is, let's say that you put your investments in 10 different things, right? And let's say 9 of those things go to 0, but one of those things goes 20,000% X. You're a multi-millionaire. So diversification allows you to be like, I don't have to be right about everything. I could be very wrong about 9 of them, but one of them could then just recapture all of the profit, right? So that's why like diversification is really, and there's different safeties. Like you can't expect gold to go from, $4,000 right now, spot price up to $1 million. I don't ever see it happening. Right. Can you expect stocks to do that? Maybe, but it's a moonshot.
Yeah.
People could be like, oh, I invested in Apple or Uber when I was younger. Okay. Like those kind of things could happen. Yeah. Crypto, possibly, but also a lot of hopium. Like,
right.
I have my opinions on that, but it's also like could be wrong. So if I was fully convicted of that, I would have all my portfolio be crypto.
Right.
It's not. I mean, it's a big portion, but I diversify because if I'm wrong, okay, like we're good still. Like it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And then separate business wealth from personal wealth. I think that's super important, not just from a lifestyle, but from tax standpoint. Okay, the shift is whose money are you actually managing? This is what I actually want to wrap up with. We had a few other frameworks, but this kind of goes all together. So this is going to be framework number 4. If it's coming down to just your money, you don't really steward it the right way, I've noticed. So example of this is if you bought a Ferrari and you drove it, you would probably take care of it pretty well, right? Like pretty decently well. But if I gave you my Ferrari and I said, Jake, I need you to drive it, you'd probably be more careful than it's your Ferrari, right? And so the concept of that is like, if it's God's money, you would steward it the way that he wants to. And you'd probably ask questions, right? You'd probably ask like, hey, how do I drive this thing, right? What streets should I stay away from? Because why? You do not want to crash my Ferrari. Yeah. You don't want to let me down. Like it's not yours, right? I remember the first time I got behind a nice car and I was so nervous, dude. I'm like, dude, this could end my whole family's net worth if I crash this thing, if I scrape it, right? Yeah. So that's the concept was like, if it's yours, like, yeah, you'll still take care of it, but you'll abuse a little bit of it. You'll open it up on the highway. Oh, yeah. I don't see you opening up my Ferrari on the highway, you know? So that's the kind of concept that I look at. So the 2 people I want to talk about, which is really interesting, which the framework around it is margin is spiritual discipline. So we talked about, obviously, if it's God's money, God wants you to have margin in it as well, because he wants you to have money to steward the right way. It's not like God's like, I want you to steward it, but I want you to be poor. Yeah. Like you have to know margin. You have to have profit for you to steward it the right way, right? So the story of Noah is interesting because Noah built the ark before it rained, right? So you got to build reserves before the downturn. You have to buy insurance before the emergency. You have to build the systems before you scale, and you have to prepare before the crisis arrives. Now, the interesting about that with Noah especially is how many people were telling him that, hey, I love what you're doing, right? Most people are not going to understand why you're doing this. Like, oh, just go treat yourself. Oh, you're fine. Wow, you have more money than me. Like, you're good. Right. Go do it, right? A part of that, which then gets into Joseph, and I was researching this, and in Genesis chapter 37, it talks about Joseph and the whole thing with the brothers, and this is really interesting. So you have Joseph, who is obviously the favorite son of Jacob. So Jacob obviously showed favoritism to him, and you know that because he gave him the dream coat, right? What happens? Joseph tells the dream to his brothers that they're going to bow down to him one day. What happens? They get super jealous. They hate him, right? They hate him. The interesting thing about that is, do we think that Joseph was meaning to get them to hate him, or was he just sharing something that actually came from God?
Right. Yeah.
The moral of that, though, is you want to make sure that you don't share your goals without wisdom. Because sometimes a lot of us in business will just share, like, we're going to build this big company. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. What happens? Your family and your friends typically are like, yeah, okay, well, because they can't see it. It's not theirs. So sometimes wisdom is like, hey, God gave me this. I know it came from God. Everybody says everything from God is good, correct. But how you steward it is something that's different. Just because he gave you something good doesn't mean you should just go around and be like, hey, I'm going to build this $1 billion company. People are going to just bring you down. Well, then what happens, right? They throw him in the ditch, they kill him. But again, God used that. So that was really interesting, right? Now, the thing I started digging into,
they don't kill him.
Well, they tried to kill him, right? And then you had his brother that was like, no, don't kill him. Let's give him to the slaves, right? Well, that whole thing was like God's protection because they really did want to kill him. Right. So it's like, that was God being like, okay, you went off course a little bit, but I need you to get to Egypt because you're going to save the whole entire land. We're not going to kill you. We're going to give you to a foreign land. And so the interesting thing about that too is when I was researching that, you have Jacob and you're like, well, as a parent, that's why you can't have favoritism. Because if you love your kid that much, you are literally putting an X on their back and being like, well, of course their brothers are going to hate them. They hate favoritism, right? Same thing with like if it's the top kid in your classroom, if it's whatever, like favoritism is never good. If you love the person, you give them favoritism, it's never good. So the interesting thing about this is if you research Jacob was actually repeating a pattern from his father. His father's favorite son was Esau over Jacob. So the funny thing about that is it goes back to like financial literacy and everything is like, if you don't fix something that happened in your past line, you will carry it down to your kids. And so that actually caused, because he didn't break the line that was passed down to him, it caused him the most grief and guilt and all these different things, right? It said in the Bible that he grieved for so long because of Joseph, right? And all he could have done was just not play favoritism. Even if he felt it in his mind, don't do the code. Don't do the thing of this like, I don't need you going out to the fields. You stay with me, right? And so it was really interesting because it was like, that's a part of it where it's like, if you don't take care of your financial literacy and your bad habits that are probably passed down to you by your parents, right? And their parents and everything else, you're going to pass that down to your kids. I mean, I think you and I both are results of not having financially literate parents that passes down bad habits that we are now suffering from that we have to then unfold. It should stop with you. It should be like, this is no more. We're going to pass down to our kids. And then now the line's broken. So that was a little interesting part about the whole thing. If you dive into Joseph, obviously when he started to get to Egypt, the big thing with him is he stored grain during the 7 years of abundance before 7 years of famine. Do you know how the story of Joseph went, of how like he made so much money? So it's interesting because he first knew, because the dream, that he had to store the grain, and because the famine was coming. So as he started storing the grain, what started happening is the whole land had a famine. And so since they stored the grain for a long time, he's prepared for that, which is what I talk about, how the rainy day when everything starts to famine, all the different tribes and people, including his family from a foreign land, came to Egypt because they knew that they had all the resources. So at first they were willing to give them money. Well, they give them all money. So Joseph then gives them the grain he stored. He gets money. That sounds good, right? Well, the famine continues to happen. They now are out of that resource. So they come back, they have no more money. So what do? They give them the cattle, which is more expensive than the money. So he has all the cattle now, and he has the money and the cattle, and they go back, and then the grain goes down again, and they come back, and all they have left over is their land, which is the most highest currency. Right. So right there, Joseph just got the most wealthy he ever, because he took the money, the cattle, and the land. So he took over full ownership, all because he was diligent, because he stored the actual grain. It's the same exact thing for us. It's like during good times, if you're buying liabilities versus assets and you're storing up emergency fund and preparing for a downturn, you then can buy things on pennies of the dollar. And then now you have all this leverage and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm buying this stock at pennies on the dollar, and then you wait 5 years and it goes past the point of the all-time high, and you're like, wow, I just 200 times. So I say you get wealthy when you buy, not when you sell. It's a whole different thing. That's a real estate principle. You don't get wealthy on the sell, you get wealthy on the buy, because if you buy low and sell high, that's the margin. Right. So any questions about that?
No, I think it just shows like when abundance comes, can you still be diligent about it, and delay the gratification and steward your money in the right way, to where abundance is great, but can you say, okay, this is where it needs to go, because in 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, I will be in a better position because of this tiny, small decisions you make right now. It doesn't have to be like this crazy amount of money. Just like, first thing, you got to know what's going on. Second thing, like take care of those high APRs, like make sure you're breaking even. And then from there, $5, $10, $50, and then it turns into 100 and 500, 1,000, 10,000.
Dude, it was crazy. I was on my run yesterday, and I had this guy who was talking about how he made all this money, and then he wasn't a good steward of it. He was making millions, and then all of a sudden he looked at his account. He's like, I had $100 in my bank account. That was it. I had nothing. I had $100, and I thought about it, and I was like, I did the math on what we have, and I was like, interesting. We have so much more, but my stewardship makes me feel like it's not like, I'm good, I'm comfortable, okay, I'm doing so much better. It wasn't an ego thing. It was more of just like like gratitude towards like, this is why, like a reminder of this is why we're doing it, because it comes down to, it doesn't matter how much you make, it's how much you can carry, how much you can keep. And that's a stewardship aspect of it. So to wrap this podcast up, I'm going to give you guys weekly CEO stewardship audit. In your business, I want you to ask yourself, did I review my financial scoreboard this week? If not, you don't have one, you need to create one because you got to review, you got to know your numbers. Did we generate a healthy profit, not just revenue, right? So you have to know your profit. I do not care about revenue. Revenue is vanity, right? It's all about profit. Where did money leak this week? That's something I do all the time. I call it stop the bleed, right? Is there waste within the company, which could be called creep? Is there subscriptions you don't need anymore? Is there inefficiencies? Is there unnecessary spending? A lot of that stuff happens a lot, right? Did we invest in something that will create future growth? That's a big one. Did we improve the value of the business? So yes, those 5 things right there, it's going to allow you to just get ahead of most people. Personally, I want you guys to ask, did I live below my means? Did I save this week? Did I invest this week? Did my net worth increase? Did I buy assets or liabilities? Did I make any emotional purchases? Now, notice most people don't even get started, but like everybody has $1. So like you can increase your net worth by $1, right? It's a principal aspect of it. So it's like, yes, it's questions. If you say no, 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 you'll be poor. If you say yes to most of them, you're in the right direction. Again, $1, not to be a crazy amount, it's the principle. Now, kingdom checklist is, did I put God first in my financial decisions? That's trust. Was I intentionally generous this week? Did I use my money to bless someone else? Did my spending reflect my values? And am I trusting God or my bank account for my security? Now, a lot of people think like a lot of that has to do with money. If you don't have the money to spend, it doesn't mean like, oh, I got to wait to give back to people. Give with your time.
Yeah.
Right? Give with your energy. Yeah, exactly. So those are things I want you guys to have a checklist on. As we wrap up here, is there any closing statements?
I think just kind of to piggyback off of giving your energy, like, I think that's kind of where it starts. Like if you have to audit your energy and where your focus is in order to do the right thing to steward your finances. Like, are you stewarding your energy and where you want to go in your life and like what is driving you to do these things to then say, okay, now I'm going to point my finances in that direction as well. You know, because like spending the money recklessly, you might be spending energy recklessly in the wrong ways too.
It's a great point. You said that my visualization was stewarding like a horse, right? The first thing you have to do is you have to have clarity of where you're stewarding the horse to. And then you have to have the skill sets to know how to actually do it. But then you also have to build trust with the horse, which is AKA build trust with your relationship with money, right? Then you're able to control it. Otherwise, that thing will buck you. It might knock you out. It might kill you, right? So it's like money is a monster if you do not treat it the right way, and you can control it, right? Same thing with like a Ferrari. You can drive a Ferrari and kill yourself, or you can drive a Ferrari and it can be the best powerful thing ever, right? So that wraps it up. We love you guys as always. We are growing. I'm really proud of us, Jake. I think this is going to be probably episode 19 or 20.
All right.
So we're pretty close to beating the top 1%. I think it's 22 episodes is the top 1% of podcasts. So I think we're doing pretty good. But we love you guys. Thank you for subscribing. We ask you guys to share this, comment. If you guys have any questions, we got a bunch of resources that are unlisted videos as well. So if you guys need a financial scorecard, if you guys need how I break down my finances on a simple Google sheet, reach out to me over on Instagram. It's at Jared Carver. You can send me over a DM. I will happily send that to you. No strings attached. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to sell you on anything. We're here to give value, and we want you guys to steward your money the right way, because we're not just after you guys making more money. We're after you stewarding and actually changing generational curses and generational habits from the past. So we love you guys. We'll see you next episode.